welcome here at the University of Vasa. I'm accompanied by quite some nice colleagues here. So I start with the ladies. So maybe Rumy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Rumy Narayan, and I work at the university as a researcher.
Uh, so Maria, maybe you?
Yes, my name is Maria Paujoja. I'm also a researcher at the University of Austria here.
Yeah. And Peter?
Hello, my name is Peter Hellstrom, and I work as something called Digitalization Academy at Merinova.
Okay. And me, I'm Georg from Graz University of Technology, and I'm somehow trying to pronounce it correctly. Iliopisto
Yeah.
Iliopisto Vasa is hosting me, and Merinova, they are hosting me here. And we have a discussion. We have an invite actually by the two ladies, or that's the invitation for a discussion today. And the topic
Is the definition of innovation and why it matters.
definition of innovation. Okay. Who should take the first idea, the first one to say something? Me. I guess.
I support it.
Just me because it's the easiest. Innovation. Well, as a technological guy, as an engineer, you basically define innovation, new product,
Mm.
but it's not. It's not. So we're trying to also introduce to our engineer students, because this is the first intention, to also say it's not only the product, it's how you produce it, it's the processes, it's the setup in the company also. So I think this is the wider definition of innovation that we have, which is for you a very narrow definition, right? As far as I got from the first impressions.
Yeah, for me, because I study innovation from the behavioral point of view. So how do people actually behave when they innovate? What do they do? And so for me, innovation is just anything that's new, like new to the context. So you do things in a new way. So I don't care whether it's product innovation or whether it's process innovation or service innovation or open innovation, or whether the outcome even is in any way beneficial. As long as people do something that they think is new, that they break from their old molds and try something new.
Okay. So the outcome doesn't matter.
For me, no.
I don't. What's your point in this?
Yeah, well, if you look at innovation, I think, as many says, that the most of the things are already like invented.
Yeah.
But when you combine ideas and behaviors and ways to do things, and also depending on who is the customer or who is the user, I think innovation can actually be almost anything. It can be really small things, or it can be like really totally new ways to do things. Of course, when I'm teaching digitalization, so there's like the whole process is the digitalization. So it needs to be like a whole system that is made in a new way. Like usually we one example could be the way to listen at music at the moment, going from that somebody's playing long time backwards, playing maybe big drums, and now you can just order whatever you want to listen at whenever. And still we will innovate it forward for probably to some like three-dimensional way to listen at it and things like that. So, I mean, we never know where it ends. What is the next step? We can just imagine it, and that is already some kind of innovation when you can imagine something. Even if you wouldn't be able to produce it or do it, I think that is already also innovation.
Rumy, I'm afraid to ask, but is that innovation?
Yes, I think I agree with him completely. I think exactly in the same way. And my experience as a researcher also is very similar. I think the question that I ask is, what is this a process of? So for me, how I see it from a sustainability perspective, there are two ways or two processes that I see. One is the process of narratives. So the narratives kind of capture the socio-technical nature of our society. So, cultures, technologies, ways, practices of living, what you take for granted, like, why you use cars or certain appliances. So these are all, in a way, socio-technical narratives. And then when you see that you are approaching limits in societal, economic, or environmental attitudes or experiences, then you use imagination. Like, so what Peter said, that whatever is to be invented is already there. So what we do is we take and then recombine these ideas. So the next thing of what is this a process of would be a process of activity. So that is how you take these imaginaries or these imaginations or these ideas and then implement them. And this is a continuous process. So the more you then you again go about the narrative because you want people to adapt to the new products, services, or ideas. So you have these narratives, and then again you reach these conditions, system conditions, and then again the imaginary. So it's very exciting because it's a continuous process. So for me, I would ask these two questions: what is this a process of? So a process of narrative. What does it mean? Like, what is this a process of? Then the activity. So narrative and activity. So yeah.
But I think also that you can learn to make these processes, to make innovations. So I mean, there's different ways to get like new things out, and of course there is new innovations, totally new ones with when you think of materials and combination of materials that we don't have from before, and new. I mean, in that way you can make really new innovations also, of course. But most of the things are already there if you just find out new ways to use things and materials and different kind of, especially in with softwares, you can do so much different things that can be innovative.
Yeah, but it's
To be the devil's advocate and a bit, how can I force people to be more innovative? So how can I force my students, software engineers, to be more innovative?
yeah. I think forcing them wrong.
If you're wrong, yeah. Yes.
Well, what I've seen is that if people are engaged, if they know that there's something in it for them or their team or their classmates or the university or the company, whatever, and they care about that, they want to do good things for themselves or for the people around them. That helps a lot.
That,
More than forcing.
not forcing. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe less forcing.
Narratives, that's when I said stories help a lot. So, we as humans, we respond to stories. So, economics itself is a discipline which is embedded in stories. It's the story of what we tell each other. So, and you're very good at that, if I'm not mistaken. He always starts his presentations with these funny anecdotes and stories, and that's the way you hook people,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you see, much of the innovation stories are hooks. So, Walter Isaacson talks about how when Steve Jobs was asked, how do you get people to get used to touch phones, when they're used to these buttons. So, Steve Jobs, being Steve Jobs, apparently replied, oh, they'll learn. But that's a great story, like you tell these stories and then people learn. Like, so
Yeah.
I think.
And to give a really practical example about that, I've been working with this company where we interviewed people at the team member level, so people who are like really engineers who are really working with innovation. So their job is to innovate new solutions. And we asked them, "What's your definition of innovation?" And they pretty much all said that it's like what I'm doing is not innovation, because innovation would be if I'd invented the mobile phone. So I'm just doing my job. And then, maybe if I have a good idea about something, then that maybe would be something close to innovation. So it's a narrative that they have that it would have to be something really big and only really good ideas. That's innovation. Whereas from our point of view, then it's also like people who are really good at identifying a need for innovation. That's a big part of it, right? Or people who are really good at negotiating a lot of freedom for the solution. That's a big part of innovation. So we felt that if the company and the unit, if they talk to people about the definition of innovation, and that if we like that, it's really broad for us. And everything that you do to identify needs or to negotiate freedom, that's also valuable for us. Because then people who, like if they identify that, okay, I'm also innovating when I'm identifying needs for new innovations, I'm also being innovative then. They have more self-confidence about, I'm also a part of this. I can do something to innovate.
Okay. So is it being open? Is it the openness to not think in silos,
Yeah.
in steady things? Is it this what you also say, like this is something which is mandatory for innovation also?
Yeah, I think the ability to look at what you do in a new light pretty much continuously would be a tremendous benefit.
I think it's recognized also, like, the whole idea of open innovation came out of, observing real life examples of how people innovate. And what Chesbro found was that, innovation takes place with collaboration. So innovation is open. And then now, when we're talking about the blockchain, we are conceptualizing innovation from the perspective of commons, because you're looking at, organizing knowledge. So we are looking at the whole idea of innovation commons, which is, really, we are pushing back against this idea of a lone genius who is the inventor and, really. So,
I was saying for that.
so I think there's a big pushback against that idea, because in reality, innovation is a community effort. It's a joint, it's a collaborative effort, and I think we increasingly, not just we always knew that, but now we are kind of acknowledging it more and more. And I think the technology also allows us to, situate those arguments in the right sense. Yeah.
It's much harder to get like become a new Einstein or Newton or something like that. But of course, there is people today also that are like innovative to make it happen. I mean, if you look at who is making the Tesla and who is making the SpaceX at the moment, it's anyway. I mean, it's not one person doing it, but he's making it possible. So, but I think to answer the question of how make students more innovative, I think there's a couple of things that you can actually do. And one thing is you talk about the openness, but I would say give them freedom to think and give them freedom to make suggestions that sounds in the first. I mean, first time you hear them, they can sound like really crazy, but it's usually because you don't understand what they are. They maybe can't explain it exactly what they are thinking. But if the first step is that you judge them and say that, hey, that can't be done, or it's not possible, or you don't understand, then they will leave their idea. And I think there is in the background, anyway, there is usually really good ideas, but they maybe can't express it and explain it exactly how they are been thinking. And they maybe don't know the technology enough to say that you need to use this and that tool or this and that machine or something, but they know what could be done. And I mean, to find out how to do it, that can be the second step in the process.
Yeah, and I think also like, what's the time perspective for innovation? Because you two were talking about that a little bit. I think that because I've just come out of a meeting with a a company, and we were thinking about where we were brainstorming around their first innovation sprint for when they can actually go to the office and what should that be like. And there was a guy there who talked a lot about like what the results of the sprint itself is, the 2-hour or 4-hour event. But what if you take a longer perspective? That doesn't matter what you do in the next 2 or 4 hours. What about if you think, what's the result in the next year? Or like the Chinese perspective, in the next 1,000 years. So don't expect something to happen in this very moment, but rather it's all like innovation. We know that it's small steps in the process. And if you define it too narrowly, like we need to come up with a great idea in this one event, it's too narrow.
I like the way of the time perspective of short time goals and long term goals. And I also had this discussion with different industries, and they were like discussing about short term, and these are the short term, and the other one was no, that's long term. And then I said, like, in years, what is short term?
Yeah.
And the one said, well, 2. Well, and then the other said, but actually that's very long. That's one thing. And the other thing that I just recalled was also when you said like the environment, making the environment. So you're leading the Digitalization Academy, and that was a side of also we're quite proud of this, of the lifelong learning program that we have at the university. Also, the Digitalization Academy of Merinova was announced in one of the blueprint projects as one of the, best practice or good practices of the industry. How do you promote there, or how do you have there the setup for the innovation activity?
Well, I think one good thing is that you give the students possibilities to get to know about new technology and to get to know new persons, especially from the industry, and discussions with these experts from the industry, and also have possibilities to make some new inventions that can be commented by these persons from that are experts. I think you need to have some kind of mentors helping you forward, and I would say the most in reality the most important thing is to get more confident persons, because quite many students don't even realize how clever they are or how good they are. They can be a little bit backdrawing and a little bit okay, I'm not so good, and even if they are really good, they don't trust in themselves, and I think to get the trust for the people to go forward and think that hey, I'm really good at this and I can go for a really good job and seek for really good jobs. I don't need to take whatever. I can actually choose. So and at the moment, especially if you're in the software business, you can actually choose quite well what you want to work with. So why don't you do it then in that case? And in some cases, it's just good to get the first job and get out to the business and start to doing something. So it's a mix of everything actually, and we try to get them understanding that what is the future in the companies, and what will I work with when I go out to the companies, and be more prepared to go out to the industry and start to work. So that's maybe the main point of what we actually are doing.
I can totally sign this students that are brilliant minds, and they're like, I don't know, is it enough? Is this good enough? Wouldn't be lasting. Wish rounds. Maybe one wish per person. What is your wish for innovation? If you have a fairy comes across and grants you one wish, what would it be? Who wants to start? Maybe again, I can leave because my wish is very, very clear. I want to be the best. It should be a one-man show, and I should be the one man. But that's a very personal wish. Maybe you have better.
I'm not sure what better, but I wish people would talk about the definition of innovation more, because we get into these conversations about innovation and because we think that, we're interested in them, and then we assume that we're talking about the same things, but we're not. And then we talk across each other because I'm thinking this and you're thinking that, and we think it's the same thing, but it's not.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a more practical.
A more better one, better for the society also. Okay, yeah, sure.
I wish that, yeah, same, but I wish that we would not, we would be more open to ideas of how people understand innovation or talk about innovation. So, yes, and I think people should talk more about how they understand innovation because, you know, you start, it's important to have a definition, but then it's also nice to evolve, like innovate with the idea of innovation. So, yeah, absolutely. I agree that
Yeah, and
talk more. Yeah.
what we talked about is how innovation researchers do research on innovation using very conventional methods, and it's not, if you do try to do something, it's not appreciated, even though it's who should do it but us.
Yeah.
Better
Well,
everything, but for me now.
yeah, now when I have the possibilities to whatever, of course, if we look at the situation in the world at the moment with war going on and pollutions and warming up and things like that, I hope that people could innovate in a much faster way and get the innovations to use much faster. So we would find solutions for, especially with the warming up and sea pollutions and things like that. I mean, there is the technology is there. It's already invented, but it's not taken in use. And the old ways to do things is not, of course, there's money involved.
Yeah.
There's old things that are spent a lot of money to make, and they don't want to stop using them. So I think if we could turn over the world totally and rethink everything we are doing at the moment and be more ecological at thinking and not using so much stuff. And if we are, we should be really thinking why we are using, how we are using. So I would say that rethink your life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everybody should do that in some way.
Again, narratives. Like we need to change the narrative of, narratives around what is cool or, what is new for that matter. Like how we have this sense of, like a lot of times when we talk about used stuff, there's a stigma attached, and especially like it depends on cultures, where you come from. Something new means that you're able to afford it. So it's a very different way of expressing your identity. So, and these we don't take into account these irrational or um, human ideas. So that's why we need to talk more, and we need to talk more to change these narratives or to rethink or to connect to this. And when we want to connect to this, it need not be like, how we do in the UN, like you guys have been polluting all this time, and so it's my turn to pollute. I mean, of course, they've been polluting. So think about it. They have been going about it in the wrong way. So you want to follow the same. I mean, that does not make sense, you see. So we need to change the narrative and point out the flaws in these arguments that people uh, put forward, but also recognize where is it coming from, because there is an existing law of understanding what is success. How do you define success, for example, and what is new and what is good. So narratives again.
So a more realistic wish, I wish we can continue this discussion. And also maybe in Graz, the exchange program that we are part of, maybe Graz, center of the universe, should just join me there for another discussion. So thanks from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Peter. for
Thanks, Peter.
the equipment.
Yeah, no problem.